Imagine walking into a room where everyone is smarter than average. Politicians, military commanders, geniuses, people with more experience than you. Now imagine defeating every single one of them without being physically stronger. That's Lelouch by Britannia. Most people think his greatest weapon is the Geass, but that's only half the truth. Because even before he received the Geass, Lelouch was already different. He noticed details other people ignored. He questioned assumptions. He stayed calm when everyone else panicked. And perhaps most importantly, he understood one simple truth. The greatest battlefield is the human mind. Many fans watch Code Geass hoping to become a mastermind like Lelouch. But here's the reality. Real life isn't anime. You won't predict every move. You won't manipulate every situation. You won't always win. However, the psychology behind many of Lelouch's decisions is surprisingly realistic. Modern psychology, behavioral science, leadership research, and decision-making studies all support many of the habits that made Lelouch effective. Today's video isn't about becoming Lelouch. It's about becoming a better version of yourself by understanding the psychology behind his actions. One of the biggest misconceptions about Lelouch is that people think he wins because he has an incredibly high IQ. IQ certainly helps. But intelligence alone doesn't explain why someone succeeds. There are countless brilliant people who fail. Likewise, there are people with average intelligence who become exceptional leaders. Psychologists generally recognize that success depends on many abilities working together: analytical thinking, emotional regulation, planning, adaptability, communication, self-awareness. Lelouch combines these abilities remarkably well. Think about chess. Many people compare Lelouch to a chess master, but chess isn't won simply because someone is smarter. It's won because they can calculate possibilities, remain patient, recognize patterns, and avoid emotional mistakes. Real life works exactly the same way. Being intelligent means very little if you panic under pressure. Knowledge without emotional control often becomes useless. That leads us to Lelouch's greatest strength. Not intelligence, self-control. Imagine two students taking the same exam. Both studied equally hard. Both understand the material. When the test begins, one student panics. Their heart races. Their breathing becomes faster. Their mind suddenly feels blank. The other student also feels nervous. But instead of fighting the emotion, they slow their breathing, focus on one question at a time, and continue thinking clearly. Who performs better? Usually the second student. The difference wasn't knowledge, it was emotional regulation. This is something Lelouch demonstrates repeatedly. During battles, explosions, betrayals, impossible situations, he rarely makes decisions immediately. He pauses. That pause is incredibly important. Modern neuroscience tells us that strong emotions can interfere with careful reasoning. When anger, fear, or panic take over, people often become more impulsive. We interrupt others. We say things we regret. We make purchases we don't need. We quit jobs without a plan. We damage relationships over temporary emotions. Lelouch teaches a valuable habit. Don't react. Respond. There is a difference. A reaction happens automatically. A response is chosen. That tiny gap between emotion and action is where wisdom begins. Next time someone insults you online, instead of immediately replying, pause. Ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want? Do you want revenge or peace? Do you want to prove you're right or solve the problem? That question alone changes everything. Have you ever noticed that the smartest person in a meeting isn't always the one talking the most? Often, they're listening. Lelouch constantly gathers information before revealing his own thoughts. He watches people's expressions. He notices hesitation. He pays attention to confidence. Who answers quickly? Who delays? Who looks uncomfortable? Psychologists call this observing behavioral cues. Now it's important not to overinterpret. A single crossed arm doesn't automatically mean someone is defensive. Looking away doesn't always mean lying. Human behavior is complex, but patterns matter. Someone who consistently avoids responsibility. Someone who constantly interrupts. Someone who becomes unusually quiet during specific topics. These repeated behaviors often reveal something meaningful. Lelouch succeeds because he watches patterns, not isolated moments. This habit can completely change your relationships. Instead of immediately judging someone, become curious. Ask yourself, what might explain this behavior? Curiosity almost always leads to better understanding than assumptions. Imagine two employees arrive late. Both are 20 minutes late. One stayed up all night playing games. The other spent the night caring for a sick parent. The action is identical. The motivation is completely different. This is one of the most overlooked ideas in psychology. Behavior without context can be misleading. Lelouch constantly asks one question. Why? Why would someone betray me? Why are they angry? Why are they unusually quiet? Why are they suddenly confident? Psychologists often emphasize understanding motivation rather than judging only behavior. People seek security, status,
belonging,
recognition, purpose, love, control. Almost every decision connects to one or more of these needs. If you understand what someone values, you understand what influences many of their choices. Again, this isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding. Great leaders understand people. Great teachers understand students. Great parents understand children. Understanding motivation creates empathy. Empathy creates better communication. Here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't carefully analyze every decision. If it did, you'd become mentally exhausted. Instead, it uses mental shortcuts. Psychologists call these heuristics. They're useful, but they can also create mistakes. For example, suppose someone lies to you once. After that, you may automatically distrust everything they say. Sometimes that's reasonable. Sometimes it isn't. Or imagine meeting someone attractive. You may unconsciously assume they're also kind or intelligent. This is known as the halo effect. Lelouch constantly questions first impressions. He doesn't accept appearances at face value. He looks deeper. Real strategic thinking often begins by questioning your own assumptions. Ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have? What am I simply assuming? Those two questions can prevent countless bad decisions. Many people defeat themselves before reality ever has a chance. They assume failure. They imagine embarrassment. They focus only on what could go wrong. Psychologists sometimes call this catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible outcome as if it were the most likely. Lelouch rarely thinks this way. Instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong? He asks, if something goes wrong, what will I do next? Notice the difference. One mindset creates fear. The other creates preparation. Prepared people are calmer, not because they're fearless, because they've already considered possible problems. Confidence doesn't come from believing you'll always win. Confidence comes from believing you can handle setbacks. That is one of Lelouch's greatest psychological strengths. Lelouch's greatest weapon was never the Geass. It wasn't his IQ. It wasn't even chess. It was the way he thought. He controlled his emotions before making decisions. He observed before speaking. He searched for motives instead of judging appearances. And he questioned his own assumptions before acting. These aren't anime superpowers. They're psychological habits that anyone can begin practicing. But this is only the beginning. In Part 2, we'll explore how Lelouch plans several moves ahead, makes decisions under uncertainty, leads people through vision rather than force, and what modern psychology says about strategic thinking. Because becoming more strategic isn't about predicting the future. It's about preparing your mind for whatever future arrives.